Origin just from UX, and this is Are Centipedes OP by channel TierZoo. Oh, I don't know. Centipedes. Didn't he already made? I'm getting confused between TierZoo and Catastrophic. Pretty sure I've watched enough of Centipede videos. I don't know. About OP? I won't say OP, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. But yeah, centipedes are like, yeah, there was a time, right, when oxygen became really high and centipedes was a big thing. Big centipedes and things, centipedes, millipedes. I'm guessing millipedes has, shorter, less legs than centipede. But I don't know. I'm pretty sure there's many type of centipedes, right? Anything that has a lot of legs type of way is probably considered centipedes. It's like, I don't know. But it's gonna be an interesting video. I like TierZoo. TierZoo usually like always, oh, that can't be, they can't be OP. TierZoo comes up with a conclusion. Look at that, you didn't know shit. Apparently they are OP. So I'm hoping it's something like that. So let's watch it. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. So, that way I know we start videos to react to more. I'll watch Catastrophic, Zafrank, like is such a Zafrank now, not Zafrank 1, TierZoo, and many channels like that. Only 3 channels like that about, animal things or something. Yeah, but, I like this. Before I started reaction channel, I never even thought about anything zoology related things. I just like basic things like dogs, cats, elephants. There you go. I was never really like interested in that much. Since that, I've been like realized a lot of things are much different, right? From Kazakhstan and also like channels like this, I realized like ants and how insane ants are and ants colony are, like how long they span through continents, countries and continents, how the structure is armies, warfare. That's just insane, and all this as well. So that's why it's fun. Was the Elden Ring?
Centipedes are without a doubt one of the most terrifying builds in the entire game. They're also one of the oldest. They're part of an ancient lineage called myriapods, which were the first builds to ever unlock the ability to breathe air, way back during the Silurian expansion. Their many legs and venomous fangs make for a fearsome display for any player looking to challenge them in combat. But has their ancient strategy held up in the face of the immense power creep the game has seen? Is having dozens upon dozens of legs much of an improvement over just having a few? Let's take a closer look at the stats and abilities of centipedes and millipedes, and ultimately decide where they fall on the tier list. First, let's take a look at their stats and abilities, and for this section, we'll show both the centipede and millipede base stats. Both centipedes and millipedes have solid defensive stats. They're both part of the arthropod faction and inherit the exoskeletal armor perk, granting them dramatically higher base defense compared to similarly sized soft-bodied invertebrates, such as slugs or velvet worms. Their chitinous exoskeleton can deflect most basic attacks from players at or below their weight class. There is a meaningful difference between
every time any of them get injured or something or like close to dying, they get rolled up, like, right? Like that animal. What was that animal that has like an armor outside and just rolls up? Armadillo? I don't remember exactly the name, right? Something similar to that because of their armored shell, apparently.
The two on this front, though. Millipedes have interlocking articulated plates, leaving essentially zero gaps in their armor other than on the underside where all their leg joints are. Centipedes, on the other hand, do have gaps in their armor, particularly in between segments on their sides between their legs. Unlike millipedes, which have their leg joints attached on their underside, centipede leg joints are located on the side of the centipede, making these weak points much more difficult to defend. This results in a much higher defense stat for millipedes, but the trade-off is pretty obvious when you look at their other major difference, their mobility stat. Millipedes have a speed stat that is only slightly higher than that of a snail, which is incredibly low given that snails don't even have legs. Centipedes, with their less restrictive armor, are some of the quickest moving arthropods in the game, able to quickly weave in and around cover and scale walls in record time. Their quick, twitchy movement makes them tough to pin down, and because of their flat shape, they have a very easy time running for cover if threatened by a player in a higher weight class. But of course, the primary reason they're
Yeah, I've seen those multi-leg things as a kid. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it's like centipede, like multi-leg thing, right? A longer size leg or something, right? I don't know. Whenever you see like centipedes, you usually see a long thing with the smaller legs aside. But there are also like longer length leg for some reason. Also like centipedes, millipedes, or I'm pretty sure centipedes. I've seen them insanely fast. It's like once they're there, if you don't look at it, they'll just basically run away and hide somewhere. Like in, I don't know, like behind a wood or something, wood frame or something. They just run really insanely fast. As a kid, I remember like, what the fuck? How is that impossible? It basically frightens you because you're not expecting some bug like that to be that fast.
Invested in a higher movement speed is because it synergizes well with the last major difference they have for millipedes, their power stat. Millipedes have no offensive moves at all. When confronted with an adversary, millipedes will respond by attempting to lock down their defenses even more tightly than they already are, in hopes that the aggressive player will simply give up. They'll curl up into a ball in order to guard their already small number of weak points, and may also begin secreting noxious and/or toxic chemicals to dissuade persistent predators from risking poison damage. Centipedes may attempt to curl and take some hits, but more often than not, they'll opt to either flee or rely on their powerful offense to substitute for their lackluster defense. The centipede's jaws, which are really their two front legs, have been modified into hypodermic daggers, able to pierce armor and inflict venom to deal devastating damage. The rest of their stats are pretty similar, as most myriapods sport fairly generic mid-level camo, nothing too impressive, but enough to beat the average player's passive perception as long as they remain motionless. Both centipedes and millipedes sometimes sport vibrant aposematic coloration as well, foregoing stealth and replacing it with intimidation, flexing how toxic their poison or venom is. And as a fairly ancestral lineage of arthropods, it's no surprise their intelligence stat is
Basically, how humans put tattoos on the face, teardrop tattoo on the arms. They basically do colors. There you go. Intimidation thing. Come here, look at my colors. I have green and red.
quite low, as they were introduced to the game during a time before intelligence builds were even remotely viable, and have opted to refine their core strategy rather than respec into a higher intelligence build. Unfortunately, this locks them out of the higher level perception perks like binocular vision and compound eyes, forcing them to mainly rely on their most basic option for detecting enemies, like simple eyes, chemoreception, and tremor sense. As far as other unique abilities go, myriapods don't have all that much. This is a little unfair because when they were first patched into the game, their most important unique ability was their ability to breathe on dry land. However, as the game's meta has progressed, air breathing has become one of the most common abilities in the game, making myriapods much less unique, and honestly a bit obsolete. One other special ability they do have is auto-mimicry. It is quite difficult to tell at a glance which end of a centipede is the head, as their back end also looks almost identical. In fact, in some ways, the back end even functions as a head, as it also has highly sensitive structures similar to antennae. The reason this matters is that the best way to disable and defeat a centipede is to attack its head first, before it has a chance to respond. If an attacking player has a 50% chance to accidentally attack the wrong end, that gives centipedes a chance to counterattack for massive damage, or escape. So those are the base stats and abilities of the myriapod. But how do these traits actually stack up against the current meta?
I'm having a hard time watching this because bugs creep me out, but still, it is really interesting, right? Obviously, they, like you said, like early on, first air-breathing creatures, so they have advantage. That's not the case anymore. I'm guessing they also got developed. What is the period? I'm forgetting the period's name where the oxygen was much higher, and this like centipedes and millipedes become really big thing, right? So I'm guessing these millipedes also got, evolved around that time because they were big, so they have armor and everything. But now with the small scale, with the things against like rats and snake, like there is no chance.
While their stats seem solid at first glance, the game's power creep has severely limited their viability. Expansion after expansion, the devs have expanded access to the myriapod's formerly exclusive abilities, and introduced new abilities to the game which function as counterplay options against centipedes and millipedes, allowing newer builds to more efficiently exploit their weaknesses. For example, the introduction of the beak attribute dramatically improved the bird build's matchup against centipedes, as the disjointed hitbox makes the risk of a counterattack less of a concern. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's first discuss the centipede. The centipede's bite is one of the strongest in its weight class, enough to make some snake mains jealous. Compared against the power of a scorpion's sting, the bite has higher raw damage and armor-piercing potential, but weaker venom. By itself, this makes it one of the most formidable attacking moves in the entire arthropod faction. So with that in mind, the viability of the centipede really comes down to how reliable the rest of the centipede's game plan is at enabling the...
Okay, how big is that centipede, or how small is that? I don't know. How are they like this kind of size? How big centipedes can go? Because now it's scary. How big they are nowadays. Because how is is this smaller scorpion comparatively? Because if if the centipedes are big and it's like their bite is stronger than scorpion sting, that's insane. But then again, scorpion sting isn't that much of a damage when you really if somebody gets sting, oh, it's a stings, but then the poison is the real issue. It makes sense, like centipedes, having bite force stronger than that. But I don't know, unlike all scorpions like really bigger compared to centipedes, how is this the case?
Use of this vicious attack, and unfortunately, this is where the cracks start to show in this ancient build's game plan. When this move connects, the damage it deals is devastating, but landing a strike with the centipede's bite is easier said than done. For starters, while the centipede's base movement speed is quite solid, it lacks the surprise burst mobility that so many predators rely on. Centipedes just sort of scurry around, hoping that they'll eventually catch their player off guard. But as long as you remain vigilant, centipede attacks are about as predictable and telegraphed as they come. Centipedes have pretty low stealth and make no attempts to conceal themselves as they approach a target. So as long as your character's passive perception is halfway decent, you should have plenty of opportunity to react and escape before they get within striking range. Their poor vision also undermines their ability to pursue prey as they flee, even though they easily have.
Bugs are losing their life left and right, and he's playing Mario music there, Mario animation. There you go. I guess that's how you appease YouTube, I guess. I don't know. But yeah. I mean, you have centipedes like tank, right? Like, look at their size. Like, they have no stealth. They can't have no stealth. They're literally called 100 legs. How are they going to have stealth?
Have the speed to chase them down. The only mistake players commonly make is attempting to stand their ground and fight them off, rather than taking the easy way out and fleeing before they can deal any damage. In addition to their lack of ability to ambush, centipedes also have such a low intelligence stat that fairly rudimentary stealth tactics, things like basic camouflage and hiding behind partial cover, are highly effective against them, and can cause an aggressive centipede to completely miss their opportunity to attack as they run right past you. It's worth noting that one subclass of centipedes does have the compound eyes perk, and also sports an even higher base movement speed.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. What is more effed up? That's centipede, has this kind of disability where like something can just hide by just moving it, or the thing that moved, the bug that moved, new centipede can't see it if it just moves. This makes me think all the bugs and animals that are in part of the part of the tree, what is it called, food tree, whatever, right? Where they have many predators. They have to know all the predators and how they're smart they are, because that bug, any other like spider or something, wouldn't have done the same thing. Wouldn't like, oh, that's a fucking spider, I can see him, it'll try to run away a different way. But knowing that that's a centipede, it can't see him, it just moved a bit. That's like rubbing salt, isn't it?
One of the fastest in the entire arthropod faction. But these centipedes, called house centipedes, have much lower damage output and defense stats, and mostly just prey on low-tier insects like silverfish and crickets. Even in their own niche of rush-down arthropod builds, centipedes have been power-crept by the Solifugid, also known as the sun spider or camel spider, which is significantly faster on foot, and although it isn't venomous, the raw damage this thing can put out absolutely shreds through anything caught in its path. The sun spider definitely deserves its own video though, so I'll save further analysis for later. Switching over to millipedes, things still aren't great, but they do fare a bit better. Millipedes are highly resistant to enemy attacks, there's no denying that. Few builds in the game are better equipped to tank a ton of hits from an onslaught of attackers. However, the millipede's main method of deterring predators, its toxin, is pretty underwhelming. It doesn't deal damage quick enough to really deter persistent predators, at least within the insect faction. Most arthropods have solid poison resistance.
I mean, come on, when it comes to ants, like, come on, man. Very rarely things are like immune to ants. They are like, they basically took a human approach of like, let's build an army and create colonies. There you go. How you gonna get past that? Of course, ants gonna screw you up.
Stats. So these types of toxins tend to really only make a difference against bird, amphibian, and rodent mains. If millipedes could spec into a more potent chemical defense.
What was he say? You see the frog like, I'm going.
Amphibian and rodent mains. If millipedes could spec into a more potent chemical defense, similar to the bombardier beetle, they might be a bit more dangerous to attack. But as it stands, assuming you can handle a small amount of poison damage, it can be worth it to continue attacking and fishing for a crit, because even the millipede's armor isn't completely invincible. This weakness at least doesn't impede their primary objective, as even though they have just as terrible of eyesight as centipedes, or potentially even worse in the case of some, This doesn't stop them from easily finding the moss and detritus that they need to live on. In addition, some millipedes do opt for a different style of defense, with barbed bristles that are highly effective at deterring ants. This is less effective against birds and rodents, but much better against other arthropods. So while both have counterplay, millipedes have options when it comes to adapting
I like
to
how
the
Owl
local
was
meta.
looking at the camera,
One major
right? Owl was looking at the camera while having the mouth. Who, me? This is nothing. It's like got caught red-handed or something.
area I think both centipedes and millipedes could improve in is making better use of their abundance of legs. Centipedes have only 2 modified pairs of limbs, their front legs, which have been modified into fangs, and their back legs, which have been modified into antennae. That still leaves several dozen other legs that they could probably afford to convert into more useful appendages. Having similar jaw-like legs on their back end would synergize well with their automimicry ability, and make it so that there's no end you could attack safely. And for the millipede, although they aren't as combat-focused, I think they would still benefit from speccing into some other utility options, like for example, fossorial legs to allow them to dig underground. They have a lot of options, but right now, I genuinely think that myriapods are barely managing to do with dozens of legs what most arthropods do with only a few. Ultimately, I do think both builds have been massively power-crept and cannot justify putting them any higher than the low tiers. Terrifying as the centipede may be, I actually think it fares even worse than the scorpion, given how simple and easily countered its game plan is once you know the matchup. They're going firmly in F tier. Millipedes do fare better for sure, as their tanky, toxic defensive strategy is tricky to overcome, but with the right strategy or with a significant size advantage, millipedes present very little challenge. In addition, poisonous millipedes suffer from their own success in that some higher intelligence builds, like lemurs and monkeys, actually deliberately trigger their toxic defense ability and then rub the toxin on their fur to gain a temporary bug repellent buff, before either discarding or eating the millipede. So,
Yeah, they use poison to get high or some shit, right? Certain animals do that. There you go.
while I think you could definitely make the argument that they at least make it out of F tier and belong in D tier, I don't think they belong any higher than that. Whether you want to play as a fast-moving damage dealer or a slow, toxic tank, there are much better options available to you than centipedes or millipedes. Myriapods simply have too many gaps in their defense, both in their physical armor and their game plan overall. You can be as careful as possible, but if your defenses have obvious exploits, you'll always be vulnerable. This is true not just for survival in the wilderness, but also for your personal data online. If you find yourself constantly barraged with spam emails, uncomfortable
Yeah, well, go to incogni.com/TierZoo and support this channel, or go to original video page link. Yeah, I mean, centipedes. I mean, look, man, there are too many bugs, basically, way too many to count. Who also count similarly, right? Who people don't even think of. But highly doubt TierZoo will ever make a video about all of them because there's so many of them. How many video can you make, right? But centipedes and millipedes, I knew that they're not gonna be that higher, but I'm like, oh, who knows? Maybe TierZoo will surprise me. But no, it's like I kind of knew that. I'm pretty sure I've watched a TierZoo video in the past or TierZoo who basically mentioned that. Yeah, centipedes and millipedes are not that strong. But psychological warfare. Anybody who hates bugs sees those 11 leg, like it's a house centipedes or whatever that are like longer legs. That's the one I think I saw when I was a kid or some shit, who just basically run away and hide. Somehow a bug acting like a bug who just runs away somewhere, it's fine. But a bug trying to actively hide from you, trying to hide in a black wood or black areas, knowing that you can't see it, somehow that's terrifying, right? A lot of bugs do that. Centipede pretty sure does that because I'm pretty sure I've seen doing that, right? Trying to hide in a hole, or if there's a wood frame or any wooden part that is black, you'll basically go near it or something thinking you can't see it. That's insane. That's just like, there's more process behind it. So you just like intuitively you just feel like, what the fuck, you get scared. If you hate bugs or some shit, I don't know, a phobia of bugs, I don't know what that is. I don't know if I have phobia or just don't like bugs. I don't know. Yeah. Right, well, that was our Centipedes OP. Definitely not. But channel TierZoo. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you next time.